I'm Michael from Flow Immersive, and this is my avatar. Now, typically when we're presenting, we don't show our avatars for in-person meetings like this. But really what we're showcasing is our Unity launch, where we're going to be in the Oculus store. And as part of that, we have introduced avatars, which really enhance remote participants' ability to have a sense of presence in a live meeting, and to also record avatar stories, where giving a presentation as an avatar, you can send that asynchronously to someone to consume that story. So I'm joined here by my colleague, Jason, the other co-founder, and if you want to say a few words about what we're looking at.
Well, yeah, I see a globe. I see the United States. Tell me about this.
Sure. So what we're looking at in this example is the tons of CO2 equivalent emitted per household on a zip code by zip code basis. So typically we see a map that looks quite like this, a 2D plane where we're using colors to indicate the magnitude of CO2 equivalent released by that zip code. And so you can see that the lower emissions are green and blue, and then higher emissions here go from orange to red. And you can start to see these outlines of cities. But let me actually move to the next step, where what we're going to do is introduce the height axis. And this height axis is the equivalent of that same scale, where the more red and higher off the map, the more CO2 equivalent released by that zip code versus the opposite for blue. And so let me zoom in here more specifically to the city of Atlanta in the state of Georgia. So we're just looking at Georgia now, and you can see what looks like a bit of like a crater, essentially. And that crater basically shows how the suburbs around city center have a lot higher emissions per that zip code compared to the city center. And we can make that even more clear if we adjust the height magnitude to now be population density, where the further off the map, the more densely populated that zip code. And so now you can see these city centers essentially that are blue or lower emissions surrounded by higher emitting suburb areas. And this same trend applies for the whole country. So not just in the state of Georgia, but you can see how this trend really applies to all major metro cities, metro areas. And you can really see it on the East Coast over here. What questions do you have, Jason? Can zoom into a few spots.
So why is that? Why is it that the suburbs have higher energy usage per household than the city centers?
So it's a study by Berkeley. I actually don't have all the details, and I don't want to misquote it. So I would definitely reference that for more information. But it has to do with vehicles, the size of the house, the amount of electricity used, and sort of when you're in less dense conditions, you have more to heat, more to cool, further to drive, to commute, and all those sort of add together versus especially people taking public transportation or walking places and living in denser housing that emits less per person, essentially.
Right. So I can imagine that commute times, just the amount of miles driven in any suburb versus in the city center, that alone would make a huge difference. And you've got a smaller apartment in the city, more likely. Probably all those things just keep adding up to change your CO2 output.
Yeah, definitely. So lots to explore here, and we're quite excited about these new avatar additions to enhance people's presence in meetings and to feel like you can be present in a meeting even while remote.
Pretty cool.